Welcome to Crossing Faiths, the podcast where the Christian and a Muslim discuss religion and politics. I'm John Pinna, and my co-host Matthew Hawkins is on hiatus for the next 2 weeks. He's in the middle of his grad school, so he's doing some papers. And I'm holding the fort, unchaperoned. So we'll see if I can handle it. So this is Crossing Faiths is a production of Roll Top Productions and Muslims for Muslims International, where I'm the founder and executive director of. We have a special guest today, Mr. John Kiriakou, former CIA senior official, operative in Central and South Asia, and whistleblower on the waterboarding issue that came up with the U.S. government back in, what year was it, John?
It was 2007.
2007. So, and author of books and has his own syndicated radio show, correct?
Yeah, unfortunately it ended a couple of weeks ago, but we had a good 3-year run, almost 1,100 episodes, and I had a good time doing it. So,
we're happy to have you. Very good, dear friend. And it's just really nice to be looking across the screen at someone who's been in the game internationally, and some of our guests that we've had are international development professionals, multi-faith, but you and I have crossed paths or passed each other in our work numerous times, maybe seen each other from the tops of two hills. And I don't know, maybe we operate against each other. I have no idea, but we've spent quite a bit of time in the same region. You were the regional officer for Pakistan, weren't you?
I was the chief of counterterrorism operations for the CIA in Pakistan after the 9/11 attacks. I got there in January of 2002, and then we set out to do our job and to try to capture as many al-Qaeda operatives as we could.
So how long were you in the region?
Well, most of my career was in the Middle East. I did tours in Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Bahrain, and then I went to Pakistan in January of 2002, and I stayed 7 months. And then I had a tour in Athens before that, but working on Arab issues, mostly on Palestinian issues, and then finished things up at the United Nations. But Pakistan was easily, by far, the highlight of my career.
Wow, that's because of the lassi,
I'll tell you. It was unlike anything I had ever done before. Oh, yeah.
You can't get any better than the food there, so.
And you know what? One of the things I discovered, first of all, Pakistani food, I gained 30 pounds when I was serving there, if you can imagine.
I can't imagine. When I'm overseas, I gain weight because it's like, first of all, you say, well, maybe I'll smoke a cigarette because anything could happen to me, So you start smoking the cigarette. Before you know it, you start eating the kebab, and then you start saying, well, anything could happen to me at any moment. And really, if something does occur, there's going to be a lot more of them than me. So I'm probably not going to win. So I'm going to have a good meal, right? I mean, that was my thought. That's always my thoughts when I'm overseas.
Oh my gosh. I was disappointed in Afghan food. The Afghan food in Washington is better than the Afghan food in Afghanistan. And I think it was just because it was wartime and, people couldn't get the ingredients that they really wanted to get. But in Pakistan, though, oh my God, the food was, it was just absolutely amazing. You and I went out to a Pakistani place here in Washington once, or in Crystal City, Arlington, Virginia. And it was pretty darn great.
We went to. I took you out for Karai, Afghan Karai, right. Which was at it's I want to say Corner House Kebab, but that's not it. It's the Palace, the Kebab Palace in Crystal City. So if you go in there, I always tell people you're gonna come out smelling like Islam. So you got a little bit of smoke, a little bit of kebab, and it's all in your clothes, And but I took you out for Karai, and people say, my Afghan brothers and sisters will say, oh, that's not the best place. You got to go here. You got to go there.
I don't know. It was pretty great.
Look, if you want to end wars in Afghanistan with the Taliban, first thing you need to do, Karai diplomacy. You just dump it from the helicopters. Everyone will stop. And for those of you who don't know what Karai is, there's Karai is lamb that's been marinated for an undisclosed amount of time, probably illegal, right? It's probably on the tail end of, it shouldn't be, but stewing for that long. And it's a marinated lamb that's served family style. And it's just, you dip your food in, but when it's being made, it's not really made correctly unless the old man's mixing the meat with his beard in the bowl,
Right.
but kids run around. It just is what it is. And in Kabul, there's a place called Shinwari Karai, which I have very fond memories sitting with my Afghan brothers and sisters in a building playing Fiskot, which is a card game but follows suit, and just eating karai and hanging out. So I would argue that you probably had to be with the boys. If you were with the CIA and if you were with foreign nationals, you don't eat well in Afghanistan at all.
No, because they're afraid to eat anything. An old timer who had served his whole 30+ year career in the region told me one time, look, if you really want to enjoy yourself, just intellectually accept the fact that you're going to get sick.
Yeah.
And don't worry about it.
Yeah.
And it's funny. We might chuckle when we hear something like that, but I did. I just accepted the fact that I was going to have the occasional fever, maybe a little bit of stomach issues.
Yeah.
And I was just going to enjoy. And so I did. I got sick like everybody else did. I took a couple of Cipros and I went out and I ate and drank whatever I wanted to eat and drink. And I truly enjoyed the experience.
And if you don't go out, I went out with my buddies. So I lived outside of the wire. I never lived well, that's not true. In 2012, I lived in the embassy in Kabul. But for 2015-16, I was in Afghanistan, and I was living in Chelsea Tune, which means 1,000 pillars. It's the southern part of Kabul, probably, as you well know. Yes. And the beginning of the death road, the road that the Lullandar road, and I've driven down there in a Toyota Corolla. We went to go picnic 2 hours down the way. It was really funny. And the Taliban stopped us.
Helicopters.
What's that?
Helicopters only.
Yeah, I know. And the Taliban stopped us. They who are you? What's going on? And of course, I was telling the RSO, I was like, well, I'm going down this way. He's like, go. He's like, we would love to know what's going on in this section, because we went to Lullandar and then farther down. And he goes, we would love to know what's happening. I'm like, we're gonna have a picnic. So, but that's where I live. And the food, you just gotta enjoy the food. You just gotta do your thing, and everybody's so bunkered in.
Yeah.
In the that's part of the problem. I think the challenge is that our embassies all over the world, the point of them is to engage the people. It's supposed to be outward, not to bunker in and fortify and just.
Yeah. Well, you've heard people say that when Hamid Karzai was the president of Afghanistan, really what he was the mayor of Kabul. And that's not the way it's supposed to be.
Right. Yeah.
You should be out there engaging. You should be out there having karai in every town and village that you can get to.
Yeah, well, I had a buddy of mine who was in charge of education. He was running the education programming at the embassy. When he came in, I said, listen, you got all your foreign nationals, order karai from Shinwari Karai, bring it in and feed them. And I said, watch what happens. They were loyal to him for the rest of the time that he was there. He goes, I don't know what's in it. I don't understand what's going on, but because a lot of people don't realize all the food that comes into that embassy is flown in from America.
Yeah,
at ridiculous amounts of cost.
Yes.
And there's a requirement to have some of that, but you can actually have a minimum of 20% of the food be locally sourced, and they don't even do that. And we're talking about bread, or not necessarily water, but right. You could have this, you could have that, and so it would save, hundreds of millions of dollars if you didn't fly in all that food. I'm not saying that the people shouldn't have food. That's not what I'm saying. I used to go to the embassy all the time because, you get your Gatorade, I would eat ice cream, real ice cream that's not flavored with pistachios. And, because I don't, you're Greek, right? So, that pistachio salesman back in ancient times, he's the greatest salesman of all time, because everybody in the Middle East, everybody in the Mediterranean, everything's flavored with pistachios. Why?
Everything. Everything. Greece is the world's second largest producer of pistachios, behind Iran.
Well, pistachios and those small little vests. You guys, so I know we banter, but part of the reason why I got you on the podcast today, and been dying to get you on, is we have this very strong relationship. We're both men of faith, and you're Greek. Your ethnicity is Greek, right? Your culture is Greek.
Yes.
I wear this all the time. So the Molon Lave.
Molon Lave.
Yeah. Which yes. I wear this. I wear this pin all the time.
One of my favorite slogans.
Yes, which is the Spartan slogan, which means "Come take it," more or less, right?
That's right. Yes. In modern English, yes. That's in modern English. People translate it as "Bring it on."
You're right. Bring it on. Yes. So this is what I wear, and whenever I wear a suit, or I'm ever at when I'm ever do my engagement, I'm at the White House, whatever it is, and people go, "What does that mean?" And I go, "It means if you want a shot at the title, I'm here."
Yeah. Come and get it.
Yeah, so I'm Indo-Greek. You're, Greek, right? Yeah. So, and right off the boat, and so, but you're also Eastern Orthodox. So you're a man of faith, and practicing Greek Orthodox. Is there a particular sect within Greek Orthodox? Is there, or is it just?
There are sects within Greek Orthodoxy, but I'm a mainstreamer. I always have been. There's something called Old Calendarist Orthodox. And they follow when the calendar was changed in the 18th century. They remained with the old calendar. I did a pilgrimage to Mount Athos. It's called Aion Oros, the Holy Mountain in northeastern Greece. And not only do they use the old calendar, but their clocks are interesting in that the day doesn't begin at midnight. The day begins at sundown. And so every single day, the clocks need to be slightly reset. There are a lot of rules with the old calendar.
I love, we got the same thing. We're on this lunar calendar. And depending on who you are, if you're Sunni or Shia, we have two different moons in Islam. So, the Shia moon happens a lot later. The Sunnis, it's so cool to be, because it was sundown. So Maghrib happens sundown. They watch and they see the sun go down. They go, I can't see this. Okay, let's do this. Yes. We have to wait. So Shia generally Shia have to wait until their guy says it's sundown, or their guy says it's this. So there's two moons in Islam, it's once you start getting into timing, and people declaring things, it just starts. You could be knocking on a deaf man's door all day.
I thought of you the other day. I was reading an article about Ramadan and about a very small and new Sunni community in northernmost Norway.
Oh my God.
And the problem is that in the summer months, of course, the sun never goes down.
Right.
What do you do if it's Ramadan? And Ramadan happens to fall in the summer, and there were people on the brink of starvation because the sun just doesn't go down that far north, and so they decided after several meetings of the community, they decided to just do whatever is being done in Mecca. That they're just going to pretend like their day is the same as the day in Mecca, and whenever the sun goes down there, the sun goes down in Norway, and they're going to break the fast.
Well, it's refreshing to hear that, because I always advocate. I said, if life doesn't fit, you make adjustments. And, the rigidness of Islam only comes from people that really just don't have lives, and they really don't want you to have a life either. You can easily change things by agreement, by consensus in Islam. And that's part of the reason why we have people, Sharia has a bad reputation, but people don't realize that Sharia is not one thing. There's multiple Sharias.
That's right.
It's to arbitrate over issues that weren't really addressed. And so people don't realize that when you salat out, when you're praying, the Quran only says 3 times. You're only supposed to do it 3 times a day. Right. But the Sunnah, which is the way in which the Prophet lived, he was a prophet, beloved of God and of Allah, and peace be upon him, his family, and all. But the fact is that he did extra prayer.
Yes.
So that's why it's 5. Yes. People don't realize that.
Yes.
And so the challenge is that we get muddled in things, and some people give that's the Sunnah more weight than the Quran, or they give the Hadiths, which are sayings, more weight than the Quran. And some of them, I'm not even sure I know what some of them mean. So, do unto others, for example, with the Jesus stuff, you could take that any which way you want, so,
Right.
any which way. So, you're a man of faith. We have a lot of banter because we've been around the block a little bit on security and development and all kinds of other good stuff. Well, one of the sexy things, and you're a published author. I think one of the titles of your book is The Reluctant Spy.
Yes.
Right. So The Reluctant Spy, and then was it The Convenient Spy?
The Convenient Terrorist. That was my third book. That was about the capture of Abu Zubaydah, and then what ended up happening to Abu Zubaydah after he was captured.
Right. So, I mean, you got another book in the works and a few other things that are cooking.
Yeah, I do. My first book was The Reluctant Spy, and I did well with that book. I made number 5 on the New York Times bestsellers list. Then I wrote Doing Time Like a Spy, How the CIA Taught Me to Survive and Thrive in Prison. And we can have that conversation if you'd like. Then The Convenient Terrorist was about the Abu Zubaydah operation. My fourth book is being published in December. It's a textbook being published in the UK. And then I'm halfway through writing a book called The CIA Insider's Guide to Surveillance and Surveillance Detection. So we'll see where that goes.
Okay, all right. So you just gotta have a picture of a comic book hero, with binoculars on the front cover. You know what I mean? Just sitting at a table with his date and saying, "Look, my profile pictures had 16 pictures of me with binoculars. You knew what this was about,
That's right.
So, you were essentially a government employee, a career.
Sure.
And who was passionate about national security, and you are still. Yes. And something was going on, right? You were witnessing a lot of different, ops, they say concept operations that are going on. And something happened. You had a crisis of conscience.
I did.
Related to torture.
Yes.
And my question to you is, how did you, as someone who is a person of faith, struggling with ethics and rules in a world where, I deal with corruption, I deal with all kinds of security issues, I deal with the community. And you and I have talked a little bit about this before, where a religious identity to me, religion to me is there's an identity, there's a community, and then there's theology.
Yes.
So my question to you is, where did your faith come in when you whistleblew with
I did
waterboarding, and you are the whistleblower?
Yeah.
If you
high. It was worth it.
So if you Google John Kiriakou, you're going to find the Wikipedia say whistleblower, waterboarding, and all that business that happened. When was this? 2012? When was this?
The legal stuff. Yeah, 2012.
Right. So all this stuff popped.
Yes.
What happened? To walk us through how your logic model in bringing this to light, because you gave up your career, you gave up your standing with the government, you went through.
I lost everything, G.
Yeah,
I lost my career, I lost my clearance, I lost my pension, I lost my freedom, I even lost my family.
Yeah.
So when I say the cost was high, I'm not exaggerating.
So walk me through this, and walk our listeners through this. How, because we have a lot of people that I would say most of our people are people of faith. Most of our listeners are people of faith. But the fact is that we all deal with these crises of conscience. You're somebody who gave up everything for something that was really egregious in your mind related to ethics and rules.
Yes.
And so I wanted to get at the meat of what was your logic model to get from witnessing to whistleblowing, and how did faith how was faith a part of that?
Sure. Faith. I'm going to preface my story by telling you that that an Israeli journalist who also happens to be a psychologist and who wrote a book called Beautiful Minds, which is a psychological evaluation of 4 whistleblowers through history, told me that whistleblowers have a far more highly developed sense of right and wrong than the general public does. Whistleblowers tend to think of things in terms of black and white, and most members of the general population do not think of things as black and white. They see things in shades of gray. So with that said, I was the chief of CIA counterterrorism operations in Pakistan after 9/11. And virtually as soon as I arrived, within 2 weeks of my arrival, we were told by CIA headquarters that Abu Zubaydah was somewhere in Pakistan and we had to capture him. Now, at the time, we believed that Abu Zubaydah was the number 3 in al-Qaeda. He was not. He was a bad guy. He was certainly an al-Qaeda sympathizer. He created and ran the 2 al-Qaeda training camps in southern Afghanistan. He opened and managed the House of Martyrs safe house in Peshawar, Pakistan. He was a bad guy. If you were a member of al-Qaeda and you were, let's say, tired of the fight, you would go to Abu Zubaydah to get a false passport and a ticket home. Or Abu Zubaydah was the one who would smuggle you in from, let's say, Karachi to Kandahar so you could start your training. He was a logistics man. So even if he wasn't the number 3 in al-Qaeda, he was still a very bad guy, and my job was to capture him.
High level target, essential to operations.
Yes, precisely,
right.
Precisely. And in the course of looking for him and targeting him, of course, we found dozens and dozens, I'm not allowed to say the actual number, but many dozens of other al-Qaeda fighters who we captured. So on the night of March 22nd, 2002, we were hot on his trail, and we decided to raid 13 sites simultaneously in 2 cities in Pakistan, thinking he's got to be in one of these 13 sites. Well, indeed he was. And the last thing I told the Pakistani authorities, because remember, it's their country. So this isn't just the CIA going rogue and running around the country and grabbing people. The Pakistani ISI and the Pakistani police and a group called the Punjab Elite Force were working hand in glove with us. I said, don't fire a shot. My orders were to take him alive. Of course, as soon as Abu Zubaydah climbs to the roof of his safe house to jump to the roof of the neighboring house to escape, a Pakistani policeman opens fire and shoots him 3 times with an AK-47 in the thigh, the groin, and the stomach, and they almost kill him. Jeez. So we rush him to a hospital to try to patch him up. In the meantime, we've captured these dozens of other people, and we go back to a safe house to begin interrogating them. Well, a group of my colleagues begins to lead these guys into our safe house, and they all have cloth sacks over their heads. And I said, and this was the first inkling that I had that something was going to just not be right. I said, why are their heads covered? Well, we don't want them to see our faces. We don't want them to know our identities. And I said, have you seriously never read the Geneva Convention? Seriously? You can't cover their heads. It's a war crime. I said, take those things off. And they wouldn't. So I grabbed one and I tore it off this guy's head. And one of my CIA colleagues said, I'm reporting you to headquarters. And I said, on the contrary, I am reporting you to headquarters because you've committed a war crime. So I went down the line and took all of the sacks off their heads. In the meantime, we had to rush to Faisalabad Hospital for Abu Zubaydah. And they patched him up just enough that he wasn't going to bleed to death in the next couple of hours. And we put him on a helicopter and we all flew to a Pakistani military base about an hour away. And I sat at the foot of his bed for 56 hours. I tore up a sheet and I tied him to the bed because I was afraid I was going to fall asleep. And I remember just staring at him and thinking, this is the fearsome al-Qaeda? This is what we were so afraid of? He's a child. Yeah. The guy was only in his early 20s.
Right.
But this is what has our whole country wrapped around the axle, where we're accusing everybody of being anti-American, and we've shut down the airports, and people are shooting Sikhs because they remind them of Muslims, and the whole country's gone crazy.
Yeah.
So anyway, I talked to him extensively over the course of those 56 hours.
Did he ever
And
tell you why he worked for al-Qaeda? Did he ever
yes,
tell you, like, what
yes,
his critical moment of time was, like when he
yes.
made that decision? Yeah.
You know, he grew up like so many other Palestinian kids in Saudi Arabia, where he was interested in girls and interested in soccer and interested in technology and hanging out with his friends and avoiding the mutawa'in and just having a good time.
Right.
But he said he once saw a news broadcast that showed an Israeli soldier with his boot on the neck of a Palestinian woman.
Mm.
And he said it pushed him over the edge.
It's interesting because this is unscripted, our conversation. It's interesting because of the Floyd, the George Floyd
Yes.
is, the same type of imagery,
Yes.
and
Very
people
much
don't
so.
understand the power of imagery. Just like in Vietnam, when you were able to see the war, people lost their stomach for it, right? So,
Yes.
so that's the critical moment when
That's
he
what
said
did it.
enough's enough.
That's what did it. And he said that in his heart, he decided that all he wanted to do in his life was to kill Jews. And we talked about 9/11. I said, listen, you certainly couldn't have thought that we wouldn't come after you, that we wouldn't try to find you, to capture you, to kill you, to kill bin Laden. And he said, no, he said, I didn't want to attack the United States on 9/11. He said, I wanted to attack Israel, but I was overruled. He said, all I ever wanted to do was to kill Jews. And it's funny too, because I believed him and I still believe him. 9/11 was not his thing. He was not one of the planners. He was not one of the masterminds. He was not told in advance when it was going to happen. He knew it was going to happen, but not when.
Right.
And so we continued to talk. He was very creative. He wrote a lot of poetry, and he would write letters to himself as a boy, saying, "Hey, it's me, your older self. I want to tell you about some of the mistakes that we've made, and I want you to be able to correct these mistakes." And it was funny to me because when the FBI, we captured his diary that night and we turned it over to the FBI as evidence, and the FBI immediately leaked it and said that he was insane, that he had a split personality, and he believed that he was two people. And I said, that's nonsense. I even gave an interview to the Washington Post. I said, the FBI doesn't know what in the world it's talking about.
Right.
He was extraordinarily bright. He was extraordinarily creative with his poetry and his letters. And this was more of a doodle book than it was a diary. It wasn't a diary. It was just his thoughts, whatever happened to pop into his head, whether it was a joke or to draw a picture of something, a horse, for example, he did.
I mean, I think people, and like I said, the intent of the conversation is not to humanize or sympathize with people as much as it might sound.
No, that's right.
But I don't think people realize when you're on mission and you're in the middle of an op, you're isolated, and I always characterize some of my time doing business as like the longest card game in history. You're just waiting for something to happen. And you all know what you're going to do.
Wait.
What's that?
Hurry up and wait.
Yeah, hurry up. Well, in with the potatoes, out with the potatoes. You load the truck, and the second the truck is loaded, unload the truck. So, and so I think that you do whatever you can to not only maintain your sanity, but you do whatever you can so that you can.
If I could interrupt you for a second, that's a very important point. And I said to him at one point, I said, I should hate you. I should want to kill you. And I don't. I said, you're pathetic. You're sad. You made a terrible mistake. And I'm going to give you some advice. I said, I am the nicest guy that you're going to meet in this experience. My colleagues are not nice like I am. Right. And if you do one thing, it's that you have to cooperate. And he said to me, you seem like a nice man, but you're the enemy, and I'll never cooperate. Well, at the end of the 56 hours, we were instructed to load him onto a private jet that had flown out to the military base, and he was going on to what would be the first of many secret prisons. He was very, very worried, and he asked me to hold his hand as 3 FBI agents and I carried him out on a gurney. And he started crying and he asked me where he was going. And I said, I have no idea. But remember, you have to cooperate. And then we put him on the plane. We maneuvered him onto the plane and we laid him across the luggage rack at the back of the plane and tied him down to the luggage rack. And I bent over and I whispered, remember, you have to cooperate. And so he flew off to his secret location. And a couple of weeks later, I went back to, not a couple of weeks, a couple of months later, I went back to headquarters. Well, he was so severely wounded that he needed several months to recover before he could even be interrogated, because he really was nearly killed. The doctor at the Pakistani military base told me that he had never seen a wound so severe where the patient lived. And because he was in his 20s and in great physical condition, he pulled through, he lived. So I get back to headquarters and I learned that on August 1st, 2002, President George W. Bush gave the CIA the legal authority to begin torturing him. And I said, you know, this is a mistake. First of all, it's illegal, right? Not only are we signatories to the United Nations Convention Against Torture, we wrote the United Nations Convention Against Torture.
Well, and torture doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
Doesn't work.
Besides being morally and ethically wrong, it just simply doesn't work. And there are dozens of psychological studies that prove that over the years. Yeah. We know from the Nuremberg trials, right, which also saw passage of the U.S. government's Federal Torture Act, that torture doesn't work. What works is what the FBI does, and that is to engage their subject in a conversation, to establish a rapport, and to allow that person to finally open up. Sometimes it takes days, sometimes weeks, sometimes months.
Right.
But eventually, they're going to open up.
Well, you and I both know that 90% of the time, we find out where the high impact targets are, because someone within the inner circle, let's just takes the buyout, decides to change the life of their families.
Yes.
And they come to us, they come to America, they come to wherever, the agency, and they'll say, you know, I know where Baghdadi is. Yeah. I know where Bin Laden is, and I want to change. Like, I always laugh, you know, at these guys that, you know, the Rangers and stuff like that, who say, you know, I was hunting Bin Laden for 8 years.
Yeah, well, you were doing it wrong.
That's 8 years. You were wasting everybody's time.
Exactly.
Everybody's time. So don't come to me, you know, and talk about that. And it's on the tip of their tongue, and they wear it on their sleeve.
Yeah.
You know, it's like we're rewarding failure.
Yes, we're rewarding failure. You know, there's an old saying in the region that I know you've heard 1,000 times, and that is that you can't buy an Afghan warlord, but right. You can certainly rent one.
Yeah.
And I found that to be immensely true. First of all, I want to tell your listeners that what you just said a moment ago was absolutely 100% correct. Almost always it's a member of the inner circle who has seen the reward poster, and they'll walk into a U.S. embassy and say, I can give you Baghdadi, or Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, or Abu Zubaydah, or anybody.
Yeah.
And is it true that you have a $25 million reward? And the answer is yes. And I can give it to you in dollars, pounds, euros, gold, silver, diamonds, land, any way you want to receive it.
Yeah.
If you can give him to me and we catch him, I will make you rich beyond your wildest dreams. Yeah. And I can tell you from firsthand experience that the CIA does exactly that.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's, you know, that's the big difference. And like I said, most of these guys are, you know, the resume builders, you know, like I said, I know a couple of guys, I know a couple of Rangers, and I know a couple of these guys. I know a lot of these guys, and they wear it on their sleeve. And I don't even say it. For 8 years, you're hunting Bin Laden down. We know what happened. One of those guys in his circle took out the buyout. We then called the Saudis, made sure they knew we were going to kill the prince. And they said, but don't kill him. Don't do it on this day. Do it 3 weeks from now.
Right.
They gave us permission. And then we went in there, and, you know, it was, you know, the SEAL team was there, but there was combat controllers on the ground already. You know, sure. there was you know, you know, Air Force, U.S. Air Force, the first there, you know, so the combat controllers were there, you know, pararescue was there, and then everything, chessboard was cleared, right? So you cleared everybody. There was just the people inside the compound, and then that's when the SEAL Team 6 came in, and rocked in there and did their business, and then got out. And so the problem is, or the challenge is that we have this perception. A friend of mine said, "I want you to watch this movie about the capture of Bin Laden. I want you to see it." And I said, "I've never, I don't know what it is." And they said it's called Zero Dark 30. I think that's the one. And so I got into it for about 10 minutes and I couldn't watch it. I go,
No,
you really think
unwatchable?
Well, I said, do you really think two millennials, and I'm not bashing millennials, but two people, essentially children with notebooks, cracked the case on Bin Laden?
Right.
A sadist. The guy was a sadist. And then I don't know, the young lady who she's like a cultural competency person. Well. What's that?
I know her quite well, and she's a sociopath.
Well, do you think that these two people cracked the case? No, it came from an informant. It went right to ops. They turned around, verified it, and then it went. And then we started to operationalize, going after Bin Laden. I go, the problem is it doesn't make for good TV. It doesn't make for a good movie.
Exactly.
You need a hero, you need a love, you need this, you need that.
Exactly.
And that's the difference. It's so. But anyways, let's go back to your experience here.
So they started torturing him on August the 1st, and the agreement between the CIA, the Justice Department, and the White House was very specific. It was to begin with the most minor technique. They called these enhanced interrogation techniques. I called them torture techniques. But the most minor one was to grab him by the shirt and give him a shake. Say, answer my questions. That's not torture, but they severely devolved from there. A smack across the face, a smack in the belly. And then they did something called walling, where they would put a towel around his neck and then smash him up against a wall. Now, the rules were very specific. The rules were that he had to have a towel rolled around his neck to prevent whiplash, and that the wall had to be made out of plywood so that there was a little bit of give in it. But there was no towel around his neck, and the wall was made out of concrete block. And so they ended up actually giving him a traumatic brain injury. So that was illegal.
And it doesn't help getting information.
And it doesn't help getting information.
It doesn't help anything. So
exactly.
Then
there was a lot of reporting on waterboarding. Waterboarding, of course, is when you strap someone to a board, his legs are elevated compared to his head, and you put material, cloth, whatever, around his face, and you start pouring water on the face, and it gives the sense of drowning. And in many cases, water gets in and you actually do drown. Abu Zubaydah took in so much water that his heart stopped beating and he had to be revived. And that happened twice. So that's what got most of the press coverage, was the waterboarding. And I somehow became known as the waterboarding whistleblower. But there were techniques that were being used that were worse than waterboarding, in my view. One was sleep deprivation, right? We know that people begin to lose their minds around day 7 with no sleep. We know that they begin to die around day 9.
Yeah.
But the CIA was authorized to keep Abu Zubaydah and others awake for 12 days. Now, when I say keep them awake, I mean you're chained to an eye bolt in the ceiling, so you can't sit or kneel or lay or get comfortable in any way.
Right.
And they have these industrial strength lights that are constantly on you, so the brightness is blinding. They have hard rock music over and over and over and over again, 24 hours a day on a loop, to drive you crazy. And then they won't let you sleep.
Sure.
Now, people died using that technique. They lost their minds using that technique. The other one was called the cold cell, where you're chained into that eye bolt in the ceiling again. You're stripped naked. Your cell is chilled to 50 degrees Fahrenheit, which is what, about 12 degrees Celsius.
Yeah.
And then every hour, a CIA officer walks into the cell and throws a bucket of ice water on you. We killed multiple prisoners using that technique as well. They were hypothermic.
And here's the thing, everybody you kill. So for our listeners, okay, so the listeners that are the patriots, and everybody says that this is what's necessary. everybody you kill, that information dies with them.
Yes.
So the objective
Yes.
has failed, right? We reward failure. So that's a problem. In the same respect, there's a human element, right? These are human beings. We're at war, essentially. And I am, here I am. My tribe is usually on the receiving end of this. All right. Yeah. So, I get threats all the time from national security people all the time. They say, even though that I'm a patriot and American and I work with the government, they always like to say that, you're this close to being sent to Gitmo. They always like to, some of it saying jokingly, some don't. I can tell you a story. I was at the, during Eric Holder, during the Obama administration, I used to work on the Civil Rights Division at the Department of Justice. I used to work with there was the Civil Rights Council, which was Muslim, all different peoples of faith, and working with Eric Treen, who was over there. And I remember I would jokingly, I went to Afghanistan in 2012, and I was gone for about a month, and I came back, and some people said, "Oh, you were in Afghanistan for what were you doing?" And I said, I was there for the last month. Don't ever live with it. Don't ever join the Taliban. Worst month of my life. It was a joke. You know what I mean? I said, but the food is delicious. Someone in that meeting, because the entire IC is there, someone in that meeting started a report on me.
Oh my God.
And I started a report on me and said, I think Penna's in the Taliban. And right away, and then it came across one of my other buddies on the he's sitting there, and I was working at the American Islamic Congress at the time, and one of my buddies goes, I'm looking at a file right now, a report, and it says, and your name's on it. And he goes, what's going on here? And I said, why don't you call the people in that meeting and find out? And he goes, I'm going to take this. This is nonsense. But this is the problem, right? You got people that are collaborating with government, doing stuff, and everybody wants to be a hero. Everybody wants to catch a terrorist. Everybody wants to do stuff. I mean, it happens all over here. I'm in upstate New York, and we've got a counterterrorism unit up here.
Yeah,
because they're going to crack cases.
Right. Sure.
Yep. I got a buddy of mine who's a Poughkeepsie police officer. Just went through sniper training. He went through 3 days of sniper training, 24 hours of training, and he thinks he's going to measure wind and velocity and all this other stuff. Like a guy who's been, like someone who's been through 8 weeks of sniper training courses and he thinks he's good. And so this is the problem. There's not a lot of community policing, relationship building. There's not the idea of knowing your community and cracking cases, right? That's right. And it's not as sexy as what's in Zero Dark 30, right? But it's the only way in which to do gathering. And really the nuanced approach to engaging communities. And I always turn around and say, all Muslim communities, no, we're the biggest victims of terrorism. We are. Yes. So there's a 9/11 that happens every month in Afghanistan. A 9/11 that happens, hundreds of people, if not thousands of people that get hammered because of all kinds of terrorist activity. And no one taps into that from that perspective. What ends up happening is this adversarial relationship. And when I say that, people go, well, you're devaluing 9/11. I go, well, no, every 9/11 we honor 9/11. And we talk about all the different people of different ethnic backgrounds, faith backgrounds, stuff at 9/11. What we don't acknowledge is that there's, like I said, there's tragic events that are happening to Muslims in Muslim countries, and it's largely I want to say not talked about, but it's largely something that is not acknowledged with the same veracity and with the same weight as something that happens in the West, and it cultivates that adversarial relationship that really starts to fester into this type of behavior that you're talking about. Mm-hmm. So you're witnessing all this stuff happen over the course of how long?
Yes, over the course of about 6 or 7 months.
Okay.
And I moved on to my next position, and focused on the Iraq War. So I just stopped paying attention to terrorism, counterterrorism, Abu Zubaydah, secret prisons. It wasn't my bailiwick anymore. Iraq was what I moved on to. But in the back of my mind, I kept thinking, this is wrong, wrong, wrong. And friends of mine from counterterrorism would give me updates. You know, you run into someone in the hall or in the cafeteria, and they say, "Oh, we did this to Abu Zubaydah. We did that to Khalid Sheikh Mohammed." And I kept waiting for someone to come forward and to say something, because in my mind this was so clearly illegal. This was so clearly a violation of both federal and international law. I was flabbergasted that nobody was saying anything about it, and nobody said anything. Well, then I resigned from the CIA in 2004.
For those reasons or other reasons?
No, I got divorced. My kids were here in the States. I wanted to spend weekends with them, and I knew I was going to have to go back to the region probably for a year or 2 years. And I decided, no, my kids are young. They need their dad in their lives. And so I left the agency. And again, I waited for someone to go public, and no one did.
Nobody did.
And then finally, in December of 2007, I got a call from Brian Ross at ABC News. And I decided that was my opportunity to set the record straight. And I knew exactly what I was getting into, but I believed strongly that this was immoral and unethical and illegal. And so I spilled the beans.
So how did your faith, how was your faith a catalyst in making the decision, and was your faith a catalyst in helping you through the post after you made the decision? So maybe tell me a little bit about that. I mean, I've been to a Greek, just so you know, I've been to spend a lot of time in Greek, the Russian Orthodox Church, because, you know, I went to schools, spent quite a bit of time in Russia and the former republics, and Eastern Orthodox. You guys don't have short ceremonies. It's like 3 hours at a pot of clip, you know, and you're standing.
Yes.
Like, you know, so you know, it's a different, and I always appreciate the iconography, and the Eucharist is hidden, right? So the Eucharist is always behind the wall and the choir. So it's like this, like the walls are singing, you know, and so it's pretty cool. So, you know, your faith is it's ancient, and your faith has a lot of nuanced and ritualistic components to it. How is your faith like actualize this decision making? Like, what happened here?
My faith really is what I relied on to make this decision. You know, I really do believe that some things are black and white, right or wrong, and torture was wrong. It doesn't matter if the victim of the torture had something to do or may have had something to do with 9/11. It was irrelevant. And so I decided to fall back on my faith and just let the chips fall. Now, there's a 20th century Greek Orthodox saint, Saint Nectarios of Aegina. And I don't know why I've always connected with this saint. I've been to his home, he created a convent on the island of Aegina. I've been there a dozen times at least. And his life story just spoke to me so clearly, where he had been the Greek Orthodox Bishop of Alexandria, Egypt, in the around 1900. And there were other priests there who were jealous of him and the quick rise through the ranks that he had undergone. And so they began spreading these rumors that he had had sexual relationships with nuns, with Greek Orthodox nuns. None of it was true.
Can Eastern Orthodox priests hook up? They can hook up though, right?
Before they become priests, they can get married.
Okay.
Yeah, they can get married, but bishops are forbidden from marriage. They have to be celibate.
Okay.
So he was stripped of his bishopric, and he was essentially exiled to the island of Aegina. And although he spent the rest of his life writing letters to the archbishop and to the patriarch and to the ecumenical patriarch, trying to clear his name, he never expressed any anger at the people who did this to him. He only expressed forgiveness.
Oh,
And they had ruined his life,
right.
and he forgave them. And it was never like, oh boy, I have to forgive them because I'm Christian. He genuinely forgave them.
Believe me.
Sure, he wanted to be bishop again,
Sure.
but it was like no hard feelings. And I thought to myself, once everything collapsed around me and I find myself charged with 5 felonies, including 3 counts of espionage, and I'm facing 45 years in prison,
Yeah.
I thought, if Nectarios could forgive his accusers, I'm going to forgive mine. And then I looked at people like, Nelson Mandela or Martin Luther King, where these guys really did forgive those who sought to ruin them.
Yeah, we had a previous guest, Suzanne Sylvester, whose whole concept of her spiritual journey. She was a Catholic, and now she's a sort of a spiritualist and life coach and public speaker, author, has a television show on Sky. She has this whole idea of accepting that things won't happen. Once you accept that things won't happen, it relieves you of the burden.
It's liberating.
Of worry about all this stuff, and so the same thing happens with, I think, forgiveness. I mean, I always say I don't have a. I think there's some people that view me as their enemy, and I think sometimes people need a villain in their life. So I'm happy to be that villain. Like whatever. Yeah. Like I can't argue with. I can argue with crazy. And yet I think that. But you can't carry with you all this,
Yeah.
And that's part of the problem.
Because it only hurts you.
Forgiveness, I think, carrying with you the idea of all this stuff. Now I'm saying this, I'm talking to both sides of my mouth, because if it's like we have the Pashtun Wali, which is, has Badal, has revenge. I always say retribution. I always go retribution. Sometimes, things, I don't believe in karma. I don't think karma exists. But I do believe that retribution occurs. I think that it's something that is, you set in motion the force. And it's always one of these things where people accept and love all the good things that happen to them. And then when something bad happens, they say that was somebody else. Right? That was somebody else that did that bad thing. But all the good stuff was associated with you, even though there's good people in your life that help you with those good things. And sometimes, that good and bad, it just is life. I always like the Sylvester Stallone, who says nothing's going to hit you as hard as life. He says that you got to keep getting up. He's got this really great quote. And it's true. Life is good, bad, and ugly. And it's how you deal with it. So you did this whole thing. You whistle blew on torture, not just waterboarding.
Right.
You have this saint that you're passionate about. He's not the patron saint of mental illness, is he? Because you can pray all you want. You're not getting rid of it.
Right.
So you have this example, and you have obviously the legal components of stuff, and I always, like I said, argue the same part of our conversation that we had in the beginning. It's like, you want to get information from somebody, torture doesn't work. Just on a practical level, stop that. It doesn't work. Yes. But let's take the next level, is that there's a moral obligation, right? Yes. And so you whistleblow, you do this whole business, and you lose everything: your career, your family, your pension, all the things your life turned on a dime, literally 180 degrees, and started going south. And you're still dealing with it right now. Your business right now is, your industry is what? It's whistleblowing. It's telling your story, and it's reoperationalizing your life. It's the biggest con op of your life right now.
And it takes time. I got out of prison almost 6 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's just now that I've gotten back on my feet and things are really starting to move forward. Like I said earlier, the cost is very high. But again, you have to weigh how you want to get through life. Do you want to get through life with regrets, saying, wow, I wish I had stood up. I wish I had I had said something. My kids would have been proud of me if I had said something. Or are you just going to do it because you know what's right and what's wrong? And that was wrong.
Yeah. No.
It was as simple as that.
Yeah. I mean, I've been involved in a lot of the, I want to say whistleblowing. I don't know if it counts as whistleblowing. So when the subprime mortgage hit, I whistleblew. I got fired and rehired 3 times by the same entity.
Sure.
Because in 1999, I was involved in these sort of they have this called the Big Builder Conference. That's like the top 100 builders that go to Washington, and they discuss what's going on. And I remember, I remember sitting in these meetings, and I had a crisis of conscience, and I went through the whole thing with my industry and said, we can't do this. And it was, we had the secretary of the treasury there. We had everybody sitting there talking about our interest rates. We can buy into the interest rate. We can do all this stuff. And I'm going, this is not right. And what I do, I went to the membership of the National Association of Home Builders, and I whistleblew. They fired me, and then the trade contractors threatened to pull their membership, so they rehired me. And then they figured out, and I've been through some of this stuff. It's and a lot of stuff with corruption overseas.
Oh yes.
But what I wanted to do is make sure that we highlighted, this and broke the ice between us with this conversation, and talked about faith and conscience and whistleblowing and all of this stuff. But I know you have to go. I know we're short of time, but I wanted to just close out with one more question, and then we'll close out. Yeah. One is, what's your message? You've been through now 10 years of hardship as a result of really making a crisis of with this crisis of conscience, and then it's something that's so high impact. I mean, essentially taking on the U.S. government.
Yeah.
A lot of people are making micro decisions and moral decisions based on their faith, their honor, their ethics and rules. And what's your message to the community? And a lot of our listeners are international, deal with corruption every day.
Yes.
So what would be your advice to somebody who's dealing with an issue right now, or some kind of crisis, that when it comes to corruption or?
Oh, sure. You really do have to follow your heart. Look, we all know deep down what's right and what's wrong. Don't try to rationalize or explain or excuse. Go with what you know in your gut is the right thing to do. Because even when there's fallout, once it's all past, you're going to realize and understand that you did the right thing.
I appreciate that. This has been a Crossing Faiths, a production of Muslims for Muslims International and Roll Top Productions. Our special guest was Chris Kiriakou, and we appreciate you taking the time. It's very gracious of you to spend time with me today, and we'll have you on again.
Soon. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.